Welcome to the official podcast of Eternia.com. We have the power. I'm your host, AJ, aka Voodoo Magic, aka Zor. And sitting hundreds of miles away from me is my right-hand man-at-arms, Colt, aka Red Pyramid, aka Dad-at-Arms.
Yes.
So this episode is going to be titled Eternian Greetings. And for anyone watching video, I'm just going to put up a snazzy title because this is our first episode of the podcast. It's our premiere episode, and this means it's going to be rough around the edges because this is new for us too. You know, we're breaking in a new pair of shoes, people. So we apologize in advance because we're probably going to sound unpolished. And also let's caveat that we're just two guys here. We don't know everything. We might get some things wrong, but at the end of the day, we're just two guys talking about their love for MOTU with a strong focus on Filmation and Revelation continuity. So, how you doing today, Colt?
I'm doing great.
Do you have any?
Good.
Go for it. You're good?
It's just good to be here.
This is
yeah,
fun.
like you were mentioning, we are just, we're just two guys trying our best to have fun.
Yes. And I see some MOTU toys behind you there.
Yep.
And I have a little collection behind me as well. And generally, though, before we get into any of that, real quick, since this is our first podcast, I wanted to get into the origins of Eternia.com. I want to go over that first and then how Colt and I met. Now, I launched Eternia.com in December 2021. How many months is that, Colt?
Let's see. We're in April now.
5, right?
Yeah, about 5 months.
5 months. You know what? It feels like it's been a lot longer.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. But in a good way. But the main reason that I launched for Eternia.com, well, it really was two reasons. But the main reason was to thank and show appreciation to the creators. We're talking Ted Biaselli, we're talking Kevin Smith, we're talking Rob David. There was, and I'm sure you noticed this, Colt, too, there was just negativity everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was MOTU has gone woke, or Kevin Smith killed my childhood.
Yeah, He-Man's been ruined. Lots. You're right. There was a lot of negativity, and after, there's a lot of build up to that negativity up until part 1 launched. Then after part 1 launched, it seemed people kind of doubled down on that. So it was good to be able to see other fans that appreciated what Revelation was, and to feel like you're not alone in that. Because I enjoyed it. I liked part 1. I was very excited for part 2. It was telling me the story that I'd kind of wanted to see. And it was disheartening to see the negativity that was out there. So being able to, see other fans excited about it, being able to, find the, for Eternia website, that was all good. It was good to find the positivity behind something we love.
And that makes me so happy to hear, because you came into it as a reader at first, and and that was really it. I was so thrilled with this show, so enamored, so happy. and then so frustrated with all the negativity that was just swarming everywhere. It really felt toxic for people who love the show.
Hmm.
And generally, people aren't just going to hang around for that. I mean, you're not going to sit there and have a message text fight and battle it out. They're usually going to just leave that environment, which so many have. And then all you
Yeah.
have is just horrible, accusations of the creators and what they did to Masters of the Universe. And that's why it was so important that I wanted these creators to know that there were fans out here that actually appreciated it. And, that there was a great, I would even suggest, silent majority
Hmm.
that just simply really enjoyed the show. And and that really led to my second reason is for fans of the show to have a place to get together without all of that negative feedback and the
Yeah,
constant.
and I think that's important because I think that's important because when you're trying to enjoy something that you like, and people are constantly telling you that, oh, you don't know what MOTU is, you're not a real fan, you know you you're not an original fan, that it's insulting. I mean, I've got a room full of action figures. I would consider myself a fan, and I would say I've been a fan for as long as I can remember. So
Don't you
to
love
get
that
grief over
phrase?
something that it's
You're
so
not a
I hate it
real
so much.
fan.
Yeah, that fan that well, just that idea of gatekeeping fandoms is so ridiculous in my opinion. People like things for a plethora of reasons. And what I like isn't necessarily something you like. It isn't necessarily something somebody else likes, but that doesn't mean that I'm not a fan. It doesn't mean you're not a fan. It doesn't mean that they're not a fan. It's just we're all coming to this from our own perspectives and we're pulling things out of it that we love and that we grasp onto. And I don't know why that's a problem for some people.
Yeah, good point. And just for the fans that actually did brave the rapids and try to debate some of these fans, because there was a lot of negativity that was inaccurate as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
There
it's
yeah, there's a lot of claims of how Revelation wasn't consistent with the lore of Masters of the Universe, and how the creators didn't know what they were talking about, and that they didn't respect the canon that
yeah,
had existed since, the early days of the franchise. And that's just not true. I mean, I think the biggest, you know, mistruth that was out there is that Kevin Smith was in charge of this whole thing with no oversight from Mattel, who are the creators of Masters of the Universe and know quite a bit about their own franchise. It was their story. Um, Kevin Smith was just the showrunner they chose to head up this project. And so it like you're saying, the inaccuracy of information that people were throwing around out there.
yeah. And that became a fun byproduct because those were my reasons, right? To get the fans a place where they could feel comfortable and just enjoy this show and to show our appreciation to the creators. And that was the original intent. But what I've also noticed was it's been very useful for some fans to fight baseless claims. Um, like what was one of the criticisms we heard? One of the famous ones. It was like Tila, right? Was
Yeah. Yep. Tila was a big point of contention for some people, mainly because she got angry. I would say that was the biggest one, because of secrets that were withheld from her. And the biggest claim, not even going into the haircut issue, but the biggest claim about why is that Tila never acted like that in the original series, and that it was inconsistent with her character. And that's one of the biggest incongruent arguments that there is, you know, Tila was very much in keeping with her Filmation character traits and what her behavior has been shown to be for nearly 40 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And she's always been headstrong. She's always
Hmm.
been impatient. And you know what? She was young, even though she looked like a woman in the Filmation series. She was young and she was still learning to be an adult and control her emotions and think rationally most of the time, as everyone young struggles through, you know.
Yes.
And what I found was that it was the first time I had put together a clip of Tila behaving this way that mirrors her behavior in Revelation, where I realized, wow, for Eternia.com can also be used to fight these baseless claims, you know? You
Yeah.
could you could use it as links finally as undeniable proof for other fans. And I got to see this page shared to other people in the YouTube video that I put together, shared to other people. And I'm like, wow. And you know what? It was ending the conversation and it was making real people realize that their memory of the Filmation series might not be an actual representation. And to be fair to some of these people, I mean, you're talking we were kids back then, and a
Yeah.
lot of them have not revisited the series.
Hmm.
So they're not necessarily their headcanon of what happened and what they remember isn't necessarily what actually happened.
Right.
And the more we actually put information on for Eternia.com, not only do people learn, but other people that are trying to help other fans questioning that literally have legitimate questions are not trying to disparage the show just to disparage it because it's woke or it's because it's this or that they can share one of these links and then someone says, oh, I didn't know that, you know? Oh, I didn't realize that. And next thing you
Hmm.
know, a negative of the show turns into a positive.
Yes.
So,
And I think that's what I like about the site and why I was initially drawn to it is because, it was a way to have that healthy conversation about getting the truth out there without it turning into just throwing mud at each other.
yeah,
It was a polite forum and it was a way to do that. Be like, well, no, this is actually what the Filmation series was, and this is what happened in the Filmation series, and this is how it ties in with Revelation and is consistent with Revelation.
yeah,
But it was done in a positive way. Social media outlets, they allow us to, say whatever we want, and that's kind of the downside of it is we get to say whatever we want, and
right. You could say anything you want without consequence,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But no, I got nothing but love for those people, and I'm always trying to open hearts and open minds, and you know what? Generally, not everyone's going to like everything,
no,
and and there are going to be people who don't like Revelation, and they don't have a particular agenda in mind, and they're not saying that the reason isn't because Tila is too masculine in their eyes or short haircut or all the other criticisms we've heard going in. Um, and that's okay, you know, because
yes,
not everything is for everybody. And the great thing about MOTU is there's so much for everyone. If you don't like Filmation, you got the mini comics. If you don't like 2000 X, you got the CG Kid show that just came out. I mean, there's that you have the Dark Horse comics, right? Colt, you're a big
hmm,
reader of
yeah,
those.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, and I know from experience, I like the Dark Horse comics. Um, with DC did a run back in from 2012 to 2016. DC had their own run of Masters of the Universe, which was the Eternity War run. And I remember the conversation when that comic series was current that there were quite a few fans that didn't like that comic series because it wasn't what they thought Masters of the Universe would be. It wasn't. It was a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more mature themed than what they remembered about Filmation being. And to your point, that's okay. We're not going to like everything that's presented to us, and that's not a problem. We all have our own. We all have our own perspectives and opinions. I think what we want is for people to be able to enjoy what they like without having, without being called names about whether they're a true fan or not.
Yeah.
But in the same thing, if somebody doesn't like something that we like, that's okay too.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then it's kind of the golden rule of fandoms: just let people like what they want to like.
Yep. So since the launch, the site grew, and we cover news. Our social media accounts have grown. YouTube channel created, and of course this podcast, which we started here. So the benefits have really been rewarding, and this is the only podcast where we're really going to discuss this, just because it's the first one, and there's possibly some people watching on YouTube that are not familiar with the site and the whole genesis. But the benefits, like I said, really rewarding. The main benefit is, just like we were saying before, it's the interaction with this great fan community. They're just fantastic. Second, the creators. I wanted to show love and appreciation, and they showed appreciation back. And how cool! I mean, Ted Biaselli's registered an account on Eternia.com.
And he was active in the comments as well.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
It was very exciting. And Kevin Smith thanked the site for keeping him up to date on information. I think it was because his teaser trailer won a Clio Award, which he wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
So he publicly thanked the site. And it's just, wow. I mean, what a wonderful sensation, because they're actually showing appreciation for our appreciation. And that's been really rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. And at the end of the day, these creators, I mean, they're people too. And they put, in my opinion, they put their heart into this series. And I think it may, it helps that for them to get that, appreciation from the fans,
yes,
especially considering the negativity that surrounded it.
Absolutely.
And it shows their humanity, because they're interacting, with the site. They're interacting on social media when people show their appreciation for it. And that's a cool thing.
Now, also what was a great benefit is Colt and I met. So yeah. I think it started, I think there was, Colt was a moderator on a very popular Masters of the Universe Revelation Facebook group. And at the time, you had shared a trending picture of Masters of the Universe Revelation trending on Netflix. Am I correct on that one?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I reached out to you and I was like, hey, can I share that? I guess you took that with your phone, maybe.
Yeah, and I was sitting in this room, the TV behind me, and I was just like, oh, I was on Netflix doing something, and I saw that it was trending, so I just took a quick photo with my phone and shared it to the page.
Yeah, and what was really cool about that was, I'm not sure how far back, but we're all real pumped and hoping for a season 2, and the next book. Yeah. And obviously viewership plays a big role in that. And it was exciting that, part 2, I believe, released in November, right before Thanksgiving. And here it was, I think, January,
it was either
February?
Late December. Yeah, it was either late December or early January, if I remember right.
Yeah, somewhere around there. And it was trending. So I was like, hey, Colt, do you mind if I, use that image of yours and turn it into an article? And you said fine, absolutely. You were absolutely courteous and excited to share it. And then I guess you and I just hit it off.
Yeah,
And
we started chatting.
yeah, and we've been chatting ever since. Any kind of
Yeah,
piece of information, even before it hits for Eternia.com, Colt and I are chatting about it. Like, and we're,
and it's fun.
and
It's
it's
so much fun.
yeah. So we definitely hit it off. We might speculate a little too much, you know.
Sure. I think I definitely think we do speculate a little bit too much, but I mean, it's just being excited as a fan is what it is.
And some of it is silly because I think it was you who the official Masters account released a bit of information that they're offering an advent calendar for
Yeah.
Christmas this year. And then Cole, messages me and says like, holiday special confirmed, Revelation holiday special. So yeah, we're taking the speculation just a little bit too far, but we're having a good time with it. So
Yeah. It's all in good fun.
yeah, so and we just hit it off, and then clear and Colt has written some great essays as well that I hope he's going to be sharing on our website, and he shared those with me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. I'm kind of in the process of revamping them a little bit and updating them because it's been a few months since I initially wrote them. But yeah, I mean, I'm like you, I think we're both passionate about this franchise and this series in particular,
Do you think?
and
For
yeah,
the YouTube,
just a little bit.
for the people watching on YouTube, we're pointing to our massive toy collections behind us of MOTU.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, just a bit obsessed. But yeah, so I got excited and I wrote some things and more than happy to share.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We actually have a new section on the website called Voices of Eternia that includes Colts. It's going to include mine. I think I'm going to share some things. And it's for anyone, for all of us,
yeah.
to share anything positive regarding experiences with MOTU during their childhood as an adult, and or maybe they have a great collection they want to share. So it's for all of us. And
Hmm.
so hopefully we'll get to read those soon. But that's how Colt and I met. And I think we should now probably delve into our MOTU origins, the MOTU fandom in us. And so basically our audience can understand where we're coming from. So Colt, do you want to crack at this first? How did you become a MOTU
Sure.
fan?
So as I've been a MOTU fan for as long as I can remember. When I was the earliest memories I have of it were even before I watched the Filmation series. I would go. There's a little craft store in my hometown that I'd go to with my mom, and they had a little book section where you could buy books. And every time I'd go with her, she'd buy me a Masters of the Universe Golden Books storybook, and I was always so excited to go with her and get a new book. And I was just drawn to the artwork. I was drawn, you know, here we had this barbarian guy with a cool looking sword on the cover, and there's a pretty female character on the cover with him, and I was just drawn to that idea of sword and sorcery and magic and adventure. And then I, found
Let me stop
that
you right
there's a
there.
cartoon series about it. Sure, go ahead.
Who bought those books for you?
My mom did.
Your mom. Your mom is awesome because my mom would only buy me Dr. Seuss. So
Oh no.
Sam I Am, Green Eggs and Ham.
Sam Ham.
Yeah, I know it all. She would not buy me MOTU books. So you already have a great mom in my book, man. So all
Oh,
right,
thank you.
go ahead.
Yeah, and so that was my first, introduction to the series. And then I found, I eventually started getting the toys for birthdays and for Christmas, and I would watch the Filmation show. And it was just always kind of a part of my childhood growing up, something that I loved, and even into my teenage years and into adulthood, it was always something that I still loved. I tried to hang on to most of my toys. I did lose some of them, at one point, but it was just always something that I could look back on fondly. And so it was a fandom that persisted.
How did you lose your toys?
I got in trouble when I was a kid, and I got grounded from my He-Man toys for like a week. My mom boxed them all up to teach me a lesson and put them out in the garage, and my dad accidentally took them to the thrift store.
Oh no.
And
Oh.
we tried to go to the thrift store and find them again, but they were gone for good. And so I lost most of my childhood collection that way.
Oh, that
So
must
it
have
had
been
all my action
devastating.
figures. It had my battle ram in there. I didn't have the castle or Snake Mountain or anything big like that, but I had quite a few figures. I had Battle Cat, I had Panther, and it was just kind of a bummer.
So
My mom, I still give her a hard time about it
oh,
now.
you
As
talked to her.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought
yeah, yeah.
I thought you severed the relationship at that
It's
point.
over. At 7 years old, I severed ties with my mother
It's over,
because
Mom. It's over.
she got rid of my toys. And then through into adulthood, when you grow up, you get your own money, and so I started going on eBay when I was in college, and finding these old figures that I had as a kid and buying a few here and there. And they weren't nearly as expensive back then as they are now. It was much easier to get those kind of things. And then it even persisted into adulthood. My wife and I met, and we got married, and we had He-Man and Tila action figures as our cake toppers on top of our wedding cake.
That's awesome.
And so for every new He-Man figure I buy a Tila figure for my wife. Um, just kind of it's a fun way to share what I love with her, and I like that I have a wife that supports me in that. I mean, obviously she lets me keep stuff in the house. So,
Mm, mm.
I mean, I guess that's my MOTU origins. It's just always
That's
been a good part of my life.
the wedding cake thing is awesome. My wife would never allow that. And by the way, she is terrific. She's my soulmate. I love her to death. She loves me to death. But and you want to watch Masters of the Universe Revelation, honey? No. This is one thing we do not share. We do share a lot of things in common. We have a lot of fun, and I just adore her completely. But unfortunately, no, she's not. She's not. She's not an active participant like your wife is. So that's
I wouldn't say she's an active participant, but she does. She watched Revelation with me, and she was excited for me that the new series was coming out, and she she's always been supportive of it, to the point where she let me put action figures on our wedding cake.
that's great.
So
All right, so for my MOTU origin, I think it began Christmas 1982. Um, I don't know, honestly, if it was my mother's idea or I said, I want these for Christmas. I really don't know. But under that Christmas tree that year, I got the He-Man, the Skeletor, the Castle Grayskull, and I believe Tila, Beastman, and Zodak. So I was real young. But it was very impressionable. And I, my previous toys were Star Wars, right? I had the Luke Skywalker with these little plastic capes, and I had this Death Star, and I think as a little child, yeah, it was very space genre toy city at my house. I think I had some of those. As a very young child, I was given some of those cloth Mego Star Trek characters or something.
Yeah.
You know, that like Mr. Spock had a tricorder and stuff like that, but those weren't very fun. And so Star Wars was my thing. But then, boom, these muscle bound, you know, a muscle bound blue guy with a skull for a face, and this other muscle bound He-Man, and this castle with this huge skull that was
I don't know if it gets much more metal than that. Like, your
oh
villain is a guy with a skull. There's a castle that's a giant skull.
yep.
I mean, what's not to love?
As a kid,
Yeah.
I just adored it, you know, and it was like, who wants to play with this scrawny little Luke Skywalker now? Because for anyone who's older, I mean, that 82, that began the time of Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, we look at today's age and today's movies, and who are the heroes? They're superheroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But back in the 80s, it really kicked off these muscle bound heroes, real people, you know, the names above the titles: Schwarzenegger, Stallone, to a lesser extent, Van Damme, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Eastwood and stuff, Charles Bronson, and I'm sure I'm missing a few, but and that was really big in there. And I, you know, I don't know, and bodybuilding, I think, was really big at that time too. You know, and what was the biggest bodybuilding championship? It was called the Mr. Universe. And here we have He-Man, the master of the universe. And as a kid, move over Star Wars, you know, it was just this wonderful mix of fantasy and sci-fi. And I just really fell in love with these toys. And the mini comics, I liked the art, but at that age, I wasn't reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. Okay, yeah, it was just too many
they were
words.
they were just in the way of getting to play with the toy. It's like, oh, here's a book. I don't want to read a book. I got a toy to play with.
Yeah. Oh, if you want to know how serious playing I got, I used to have narratives where something would happen. Like back when I was a kid, I thought Manny Faces was a villain, and lo and behold, you know, I watched the Filmation episode, and he wasn't a villain. He was a hero, or he started out as a villain, right? He was misconstrued.
Yeah, he started out as the monster, and
yeah, but he wasn't really a monster inside. But I think he was tired of being teased and picked on, or something like that. But the point was that he overtook Skeletor in my play area. And, you know, he conquered Castle Grayskull. And I actually had a little piece of paper that I would write, like, you know, where I left off. So I could continue.
That's awesome.
So I could continue the story next time. And so, but yeah, I didn't pay attention.
And that's the magic of it, right? Like, that's the magic of Masters of the Universe, of the toys. Like, Mattel gave us these figures and these play sets, and I mean, there was kind of a story, but the idea was, no, make your own story. You know, and that was kind of the whole inception of Castle Grayskull. It didn't belong to the heroes. It didn't belong to the villains. It was just, what was it called? The Fortress of Mystery and Magic. And it, you know, it was just kind of the centerpiece of these battles that you would play in your living room.
Yeah, and you had these two halves of the sword, and you put them together, and they open the castle. And I mean, Castle Grayskull was a scary place. You had that little monster sticker, like dungeons where the monsters are trying to creep out, and then you have this horrible trap door where you fall.
The trap door scared me for some reason. I was like, man, that's scary. Like, it's a plastic trap door. I don't know why it scared me, but
yeah,
it did.
And even though there was some mini comics, I mean, I didn't have that many. And some comics, I got the same book that early on. I mean, same comics, I got the same book. Listen to me. This is what I get when I'm drinking a little alcohol. Some figures, please correct me, Cole, if I start saying something weird, please correct me. Some of the figures had some of the same books, if I recall, you know.
Yeah.
Like if I got Merman and Beastman, I might have ended up with the same mini comic.
Right.
But so yeah, I didn't really have much of a storyline until the Filmation show, and that sealed the deal for me. I mean,
Yeah.
in 1983, 130 total episodes. You know, you got John Irwin doing the voice of He-Man, and Alan Oppenheimer as Skeletor, and Linda Gary as well, geez, everybody,
She
right?
was everybody. She was Tila. She was the sorcerer. She was Evelyn.
Queen
I think
Marlena.
Queen Marlena. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
her and Erica Scheimer were most of the voice cast for the female characters.
Isn't that amazing? She did such
Yeah,
a good job.
aside from She-Ra's voice actress, but She-Ra came a little bit later. But yeah,
Yeah.
Linda Gary and Erica Scheimer did most of the heavy lifting for the female characters.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
just amazing.
I know, especially Linda. I mean, I sometimes can hear like John's voice in multiple characters, even though he
Hmm.
did a great job too. But Linda was just off the charts great for me. But
Yeah, her range was very impressive.
yep. So after school, man, or you know, or during the summer, I was just so excited to watch the Filmation show. There was so much charm, the music, the you know, I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, you know, and and the animation, and you know what, I would just look forward to even the repeated use of animation. I don't know why, but I loved, you know, that one shot where He-Man would like punch the screen.
Oh yeah, he runs up
I
to the screen during the intro and just punches it, and I mean it's
ah
cool like that. And my favorite thing to see in the cartoon is when he would toss the sword from one hand to the other hand. Do you remember that?
yes,
He'd
yep,
like
yep,
switch
yep.
hands, and I was like, that's so cool. I was like, why
How
is
could I
He-Man
not
so
remember
cool?
that? They repeated
Yeah,
that 20 million times.
exactly. It was just stock animation, but every time I was just like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
It is amazing that even as an adult, I don't look at that with anything other but fondness.
Hmm.
And you know, every time I see it's amazing how they incorporated for these cost saving methods, you know, to reuse animation and somehow still make each episode feel fresh
Yeah.
and new and separate from the one before, because um the lush lore that was creative, it was so expansive for a kids show. And I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe haven't visited that show since a child, that just remembers, it's corny, and you know, it was goofy and campy and it was fun. But no, there was, you know, there was a series Bible written for that was pretty extensive, by Michael
Hmm.
Halprin. And boy, did that show really, what's that word? I guess not just explore it, but fill out the world of Eternia. You know?
There's a lot of thought put into it. There's a lot of attention to how everything kind of works together, and just what do they call it? World building. The world
Yeah,
building of it all was just incredible, especially for a children's program.
yeah,
You know,
it,
and yeah, a lot of we talk about the reuse stock animation and stuff like that, but it was actually a very clever use, to save on expenses to be able to pump out these episodes. And like you said, we got 130 episodes of this. That's
yeah.
amazing.
In 2 years, you know, in 2 years' time, I think it ranged over like 1983 to 1985, but that's only because it started, I think, mid-year or close to the end of the year. Well, regardless, it is amazing and it is wonderful, and that this was the cartoon of the vintage toys, and the Filmation show is what my fandom still rests upon.
Hmm.
My love for everything MOTU stands on the shoulders of that show. So, but as I grew up, of course, I moved on. Um, I saw Secret of the Sword in the theaters. I got taken to that. Did you see that in the theater at all,
I
Colt?
didn't I didn't see that in theater. I remember seeing the live action movie in the theater, and I
Yes, me
remember
too.
leaving the theater in tears because Karg scared me. He was ugly, he had a gross voice, he looked slimy, he scared me.
I I came out of that. I think I think I was disappointed that I could see Skeletor's nose. I think that's
With the cloth mesh.
yeah. I think that was the most disappointing. I mean, overall, it was disappointing. I mean, I really wish it took place on Eternia for most of the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
And every time we're hanging around Courtney Cox, I'm like,
It's
why
just
can't
wasted time.
yeah, why can't we stay with He-Man and T? I love. I'll be honest with you, I thought Dolph Lundgren played a good He-Man, and
He's good. I like him. I mean, Dolph
and
Lundgren, he like you were saying earlier, he comes from that era of muscle-bound heroes that we
yes,
expected in the movies, and so Dolph Lundgren was an easy choice,
yeah, he just came
and
off of
I love
Rocky
that it was him.
Four,
Yeah, for sure.
Ivan
He's this
Drago.
big muscle-bound blonde guy. That's exactly who we needed.
I will break you. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? And I thought Tilo is great. Not a big fan of Man at Arms, Evelyn, and then Frank Lucella. Though looking back at that movie,
I think Frank Langella and Meg Foster's Evil Lynn are the standout performances of that movie. Like anytime they are on screen, they just command the entire scene,
yeah, yeah,
and
and
it's fantastic.
he really chews the scenery,
Hmm.
so that's always fun to revisit. So I saw those in the theater, and I still continue to love MOTU, and then I think New Ventures wasn't a fan of. 2000X I just found to be okay. It wasn't really my thing. I
2000
know.
2000X hit when I was in college, and it was just I was excited because it was He-Man. Again, it was like, oh, there's a new He-Man cartoon. There's new toys on the shelves, and it reminded me of being a kid because something I loved from being a kid was back. You know, so I was excited when it was first out, but watching it, I didn't fall in love with it. It just I kind of bounced off it. I watched all of it obviously, but I
Yeah.
never, I didn't internalize much of it. It was a little bit too anime inspired for me, and it wasn't necessarily what I had wanted from a new He-Man cartoon. I guess I wanted the story to be continued from what we got with Filmation, and 2000X was, more or less a reboot, and it was another origin story for He-Man, telling stories that we'd kind of already seen before.
I think that's a good point. I wanted a continuation too, but I tried to go with it, and yeah, the anime style, it was a little over the top for me. I know you and I talked before. I think I mentioned that I also struggled with some of the fight scenes, especially early on. There was a lot of
Hmm.
this samurai type of strike a pose, swing your
Yeah,
sword, and then strike more poses.
there's a
And
lot of weapon spinning and a lot of jumping through the air for the
yes,
for the action scenes.
and not much battling, and you'd actually see more action, believe it or not, in the Filmation cartoon. Now, granted, it's not a sword striking someone or a
It's more kind of
fist.
wrestling or throwing.
Yes, yes, but the excitement was really amped up, and then tremendously so in Revelation. So I struggled with that. I wasn't a fan of Skeletor either, and not just I'm not. I prefer the Demon origin over the Keldor origin, but just the performance, the actor. His name escapes me, but
Mike, is it Michael? Is it Dobson? Does
Dobson,
that sound
yeah,
right?
Dobson, yeah. He to me always sounded like he was creating a voice, like you and I would be. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, it sounds like an impersonation of Oppenheimer.
right, where Oppenheimer sounds like a Skeletor. He doesn't sound like someone doing an impersonation of a character. He sounds just like a character, and this sounds like his legitimate voice. And so did Mark Hamill in Masters of
Mhm.
the Universe Revelation. Mark never once sounded to me he was putting on a voice. And
You know, and I know one of the complaints about Mark Hamill's Skeletor is that it sounds too much like the Joker, like, you know, his Joker from the animated series. And there are similarities, but
yes,
there are quite a few differences as well. The inflections are different, the pitch is different, the tone, and you know, and just I mean, Mark Hamill's a master at voice acting, you
yeah,
know, and he can go up and down, and you know, and I really loved his Skeletor, and I didn't think it was it wasn't just a copy of the Joker for me. It was much. It was
right.
more. It There was more to it than that.
I can appreciate the Joker criticism, but the one thing he's not is he doesn't sound like someone, an amateur putting on a
Yeah,
voice, you know.
yeah.
You bumbling boob, you furball, you know, something like
That,
that.
that's not bad.
Ah. Damn it. I could have given Alan a run for his money. You know, he
You
just
could have.
turned his
You missed
birthday.
your calling.
Yeah, I
Was
missed
it
my
just his
calling.
birthday?
Yeah, he's in his 90s. Bless his heart.
Oh, well, and
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons why he came back as Mossman for Revelation,
Yeah.
and the reason for that is he wasn't physically able to do the Skeletor voice.
Right.
Like
Right.
they had that conversation with him, and he wasn't able to do it. It was too much on his vocal cords.
Yeah, I think after a while, and that even happens to singers and stuff, right? There's
Hmm.
certain pitches that they can no longer reach, if that's appropriate. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I just found the series to be okay. By the way, if there's lovers of the 2000 X series, that's awesome. And I'm not disparaging the series. I'm just saying it wasn't my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, so then I went on and I collected the DVD sets, and which I think are worth a lot of money now, and a lot of the books. And then I collected some of the classics line,
Hmm.
mostly the Filmation figures. You know, I think they would call it He-Man 2.0. You guys can see that if you're watching the YouTube behind me. So, and I have, I think Granomir might have been my first classics.
Oh,
So,
that's cool.
yeah. And
I I
go ahead.
remember I remember reading a Toy Fair magazine and seeing a preview way back in, it was either 2007 or 2008, but they had an image of a prototype for He-Man for the classics line that they were getting ready to launch, and I remember losing my mind with excitement about a new He-Man toy line coming out. And I mean, I bought a lot of the classics. Um, I don't have as many as I used to. I mainly just kind of held on to my He-Man figures, my Skeletor figures, and their variants, and then I, well, my wife kept the Tila figures because those are hers. But yeah, I mean, I got rid of a lot of the extra characters and the extra heroes, the extra villains from the classics line because mainly because I didn't have room.
Well, those have really increased in value too, I
They
think.
have they've jumped they've jumped in price quite a bit.
Actually, I think this Granomir here is ridiculous. It's something like $500 or
Oh,
something like that.
I'm not surprised at all. I mean, just that Filmation style He-Man and Skeletor, each one of those is easily 200 loose.
Wow, that much. I haven't.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. And that's what pushed me over the edge. And maybe we'll get there later. But I remember when classics first came out, and I kind of stayed away from collecting because I lost my figures too, which I guess we'll get into in a little bit. Um, but finally, you know, since Filmation has my heart, once they started making that, you know, those Filmation and Granomir, geez, I mean, the wisest dragon. I mean, I just, you know, and he was great in those episodes, not just the character, but the voice, right?
Hmm.
I'm not sure who played Granomir. Was it Irwin?
I think it was Irwin.
Yeah, I think it was Irwin.
I
And
mean, we could be wrong, but I'd say 85% sure that it was Irwin.
yeah, we could be wrong a lot, guys. Please
Yeah.
don't kill us in the comments. We apologize if we get anything wrong. So,
Yes. We're trying our
um,
best.
but finally, I'm all in again. just like I was with as a little tyke with Masters of the Universe Revelation and the entire Masters of the Universe Revelation line. I guess on my camera you can see some of them are boxed up there, and I have some loose. Those are duplicates and stuff. Some of my favorites I bought duplicates for loose, and I have the Masterverse He-Man up on the Battle Cat in the 4 Eternia pose,
which is classic.
Yeah, and it has just reinvigorated me and my love. Even though obviously my love has continued through the years, there's the DVDs and stuff, but I am just, at some point you were like 100% in as a kid, and then as you grew an adult, you're maybe 50% in or 60% in, and now I'm just 100% in. That's a testament to the show, not the timing, the show. That's how wonderful I thought this was.
Exactly. I remember when they launched the Origins toy line a couple years ago, I was excited for it because it was more He-Man. I was like, oh, cool. And they look like the vintage figures. That's cool. That's a good idea. I bought them mainly for my kids to be like, hey, this is something I liked as a kid. I would like to share that with my kids, so I'd buy the figures for them. I have a couple on my shelf of ones that I like, but I never got that bug, that excitement again. And then Revelation just dropped, and like you said, I loved it. And because of the show, I love the new Masterverse line, and I'm buying lots of figures again.
Are you buying every one?
Most of them. I'm not buying all of them because there are some characters that I just don't like, even if they were in Revelation. Mainly Fisto. I don't like Fisto. I've never liked Fisto. So I'm like, I don't need that one. Everything else I have.
It's a very good rendition of him. It's a very well made figure.
Yes, it's a
Fisto. Fan or not? Figure. Yeah, fan or not.
I can admit it's probably one of the best figures in the line so far.
Yeah, if I would have to say, for me, it would be Triclops, Fisto, Scaragolo. I think Man in Arms is fantastic as well. And so you know what? This might be a little controversial, but I even love the Teela.
I love the Teela figure.
Yeah, I have a post.
Mercenary Teela. I think I've bought her the most because I bought one for myself. I bought one for my wife. I bought one to customize because I wanted to start trying to make custom figures. So I made a snake armor Teela, and she's on the shelf right here behind me, right? And this is weird trying to do it behind my head. That one. Anyway, so I bought her, and then I bought another one so I could have her in her gas mask and cloak.
Yeah.
And so I think she's the one I bought the most, and she's a pretty fantastic figure.
How many pre-orders do you have in for 2.0? Classic
I have right now. I have 2 pre-orders for 2.0 Teela. One for me, one for my wife.
Okay.
But we'll see if that grows. Has an alternate head. We'll see if that grows.
I don't think I have a figure from the Masterverse line I dislike, to be honest with you. Some characters are better than others, but I have committed to buying every single Masterverse in the Revelation line. So for money wise, I think for now I decided to skip on New Eternia and anything else that might come. But if it's labeled Revelation, I'm going to be getting it. And, I'm just going to focus on those figures and just hope they continue with that. I know we're getting the Hero. And I'm still waiting for my Merman to arrive. And
my Merman got here today.
He's so lucky.
There he is.
There he is.
I haven't even had time to get him out of the package, but he's a cool figure. I'm still waiting for my King Grayskull to waiting on that pre-order.
But there was always like, if you ever watched SpongeBob, SpongeBob would be waiting for something, and then it would say 2 days later,
Yep,
and he's
exactly.
still waiting. But you talk
Yep.
2 years later, we're
Yeah.
still waiting for this pre-order.
Yep. Well, and even
Uh,
with 2.0 Tila, with classic Tila for Revelation, she was part of the wave 4 with, new Eternia, He-Man, Skeletor, and Merman. I have those 3 figures. They came. And no
yeah.
Tila yet.
I think that's a whole nother podcast in regards to the distribution
I think it is. I think it is.
and we need to get someone from Mattel on the podcast to answer some questions
That's right.
nicely, because we're
We'll
big
ask.
fans.
We'll ask politely.
Yes. So finally, I guess until we go into our last topic of just our general thoughts of Masters of the Universe Revelation, what was your favorite figure as a child? Now, I assume it's going to be a vintage one, but it
Yes.
could be like a toy as well. It could be Grayskull. It could be, the Wind Raider. What was your
So
favorite?
my favorite figure was Cobra Khan. And
Ah.
I know this is going to sound silly, but he had the water squirt action feature, and I would put Kool-Aid in my Cobra Khan figure, and then I just walk around all day just squirting Kool-Aid in my mouth with my Cobra Khan action figure. And so that's the figure I played with the most because of that, and I have the most love for it because it just makes me smile when I think of Cobra Khan.
So was this one of the figures that your mom or your dad gave away?
Yeah, it ended up in the box. So I lost my Kool-Aid dispenser.
So you've never tried to reclaim that glory, to find one on
No,
eBay?
I'm afraid it would taste too much like plastic. I think my tastes are more discerned now that I'm an adult.
I tell you, my favorite is right here. It's Web Store, and
Nice.
it's the only vintage Web Store, or only vintage MOTU I have. Actually, above here, I do have the classics Web Store as well, and
Nice.
I think he's quite pricey as well. And he's kind
Excellent.
of like, he's a mix. I should be really holding these up to the camera for the YouTube video. Pull them off my shelf, and but the classics, I think, did a combination of the 2000X style with the multiple spider
Yeah, the
legs
extra
behind.
appendages.
Yeah, but still kept them, it was a hybrid of the vintage and 2000X style. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually appreciated that look, so I picked that up.
Awesome.
But yeah, I lost all of my figures as well. My Castle Grayskull, my Snake Mountain, everything in a flood.
Oh no.
But it's different from what you think. It was, I was a young guy. 1999 Hurricane Floyd came ravaging in my state, and my house was flooded, and it was like one of those what you see on the news that you say, oh, that, it almost seems surreal. I was rescued from a second floor bedroom window by a police boat.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's how high the water was. So I was living in a valley. I was too young to own a home or anything. I'm just renting. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's and to imagine how high the water was, guys. For the peeps at home, I was in the police boat, and the police officer driving the police boat would go heads up, and the people in the police boat, including me, would have to duck down because to get under the power lines.
Wow.
Yeah. So that flood occurred, and then through 3 days later, the water rescinded, and the there was martial law in that area, and I had a few hours to, or no, I think I had only daylight, 8 hours, I think it was, to go back and to recover anything I could. And most of everything was damaged, but I had the MOTU stuff on a high up shelf in a closet. And that actually didn't get wet. And fortunately for me, I was able to, the poor people that lived in the houses that got flooded, they were stuck. This was their home. If they liked it or not, they had to get it fixed up. I mean, it was after three days, I had a hardwood floor in my living room. And when I came back 3 days later, the floor looked like waves. The water made it, just bow. And but fortunately, because I didn't own the place, I was able to just walk away. But the only obligation I had was to I had to get all my junk out. So if it was a submerged couch, I have to get rid of it. Clothes, I had to get rid of it. So and anything I could spare, I took with me. And some people came and helped out, and some people I didn't even know. And there was a friend of a friend. His name was Ralph. I haven't talked to him since, but I didn't know him. But from that morning till 8 hours later, he helped me unload everything I had, get rid of everything, junk everything, clean out the whole house. And around the middle of that cleanup, he was enamored with the Masters of the Universe stuff, my vintage toys. He said to me how much he loved these toys and that he wished he had his. And he was asking me questions about it. And then 5 hours later or something, we were done. And actually, I think we got done in the middle of the night because we had to cart everything off. But I decided, I was planning to save these vintage toys, and who knows, maybe if I had a son or a daughter that was interested in these, that I would share them with them. And but at that moment, because of just his complete act of kindness, I just wanted to return it with kindness. So I gave him every single vintage toy I had, and he was really thankful. And it was just the best way I could express to this guy that I wasn't friends with, that I didn't know before this, haven't seen him since, just how appreciative I was. So I didn't have any vintage toys for years, but I had one favorite playing when I was a little kid, and that was Web Store. Man, did I love that Web Store. I don't even know if he was my favorite character. I guess I wouldn't say he even was. Geez, not in a Filmation show. Have you heard his voice?
It's interesting.
Oh, it's John Irwin's doing it, and it's the same voice as the widget, the little Hobbit widget, Squinch. Squinch is his name, Squinch or something.
Yes.
And yeah, it's such a, Webster looks so cool in the Filmation series, and then when he talks, I'm like, oh no. Beast Man, he sounds so badass, and Merman sounds cool, and Skeletor sounds so cool, and then Webster, but it was my favorite toy. And I love the web action, and that he can scale, and he was awesome. So I decided after a long time to reclaim one vintage toy, and there he is. Yep. I wasn't going to chase them all down. No.
Yeah.
But I decided just to get one, and Web Store is my guy. So, and what breaks my heart is Web Store in Masters of the Universe Revelation. He was in it, but he didn't say a single thing.
Yeah, he didn't have any dialogue.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, this is Filmation continuity. I can't wait to hear his voice, because they changed some of the voices, like Merman and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Some like they're not going to give him little widget Squinch's voice.
It's going to be new. It's going to be
cool. It's going to be
new and improved and scary.
Yeah, I'm Webster, something like that. And 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 nope, he doesn't say anything. I was like, oh, Kevin, Ted, Rob, you're killing me. But I was still happy to see him in the cartoon. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but
that's awesome.
yeah, that's my guy. So all right, and then I guess before we wrap it up, we should finally discuss the elephant in the room. The Granomere in the room, if you will.
Yes.
The whole reason why for Eternia.com exists, and that's Masters of the Universe Revelation. So we won't get into like complete depth. We're going to do that later on in other episodes, but we'll try to bounce around here. So let's start in 2019, right? It's the
Hmm.
America's Mightiest Toy Show at Paracon in Anaheim, California, and
Yeah.
Masters of the Revelation is announced, and the poster and synopsis is dropped, and boom. So, what is cult thinking at this point?
So I so Paracon happens in the summertime, right? Usually in around August. I farm, and so I'm outside most of the time during the summer, just working, and so I'm not really paying attention to news outlets and stuff like that. But I got a email alert because I have buzzwords set, for news things that pop up, and it said, "Oh, Kevin Smith is attached to a new Masters of the Universe cartoon series, and it's a continuation of Filmation." And that was the headline I read, and I was out irrigating corn, I think, and I lost my mind with excitement. And then later that night, I was looking everything up. I was watching the video reveal of it, the coverage of PowerCon and all that, and I just remember watching the live panel where they bring all the writers up on. They brought Ted Biaselli up on stage. They showed that synopsis of what the series was going to be. They showed the poster of Castle Grayskull with the power sword floating in its open jaws, and I was over the moon excited because I'd seen a lot of Kevin Smith movies. I didn't like all of them, but I liked most of his body of work. And I always liked Kevin Smith. I always thought he was a genuine person and somebody that seemed like a cool guy. I was like, yeah, sure. I would love for him to make a Masters of the Universe series. So,
Yeah, that
I mean,
poster was
I was
something
excited.
else, huh?
Oh, it's such a good poster. It was beautiful. And I was like, if this is the art, and I remember thinking specifically that I was so excited because the sword is in that poster and it's the classic Filmation sword. And I was like, they got the design of the sword right. It's not the 2000X mechanical weird sword that I can't stand. It's the power sword from Filmation. And I was super excited. So
Yeah.
from that announcement, I was in and I was pumped.
Yeah, I was pumped too, especially direct sequel to the
Hmm.
classics era, the Filmation. I'm like, you mean Filmation? What? And then I read more and I'm like, holy cow. They're
Yeah.
continuing what most people think. Well, really what, it's the vintage toys in the show is what is 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 really what put MOTU on the map, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I haven't been that happy in regards to MOTU since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was so stoked. And that poster, man, that poster, I think Ted had indicated that
It was
on
what, like
a
3 days time that they
yeah,
made
on
that
an
poster in
interview.
3 days. Yeah.
Yeah, that they just quickly put that together and it's glorious. It's
It's
glorious.
beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of promotional art.
Yeah, and you know what? I need the poster of that. And I've looked on eBay before, but there's so many people that are just selling knockoffs. They get a high
Yeah.
res and I don't. Is there an official
I
poster?
don't I don't know if there's an official poster
Hmm.
for that. I know there's an official mini poster for Nate's promotional artwork that they released right before part 1 dropped. It's on your shelf behind you on the book cover.
Yeah. Yep.
That art, I know because Kevin Smith was giving them away at one of his podcasts where he was talking about the show. But I don't know if that initial Castle Grayskull art exists. I'm so mad you have that. I have that pre-ordered too, and it's not showing up until. Yep, there it is.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm jealous.
I mean, I love them both. Just glare, but I love them both. But this is
it's good. Well, it's moody.
Yeah.
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's elegant, and it gets things right. Mainly the design of the sword, and it blew my mind.
For anyone just listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, I'm holding up the Art of Masters of the Universe Revelation hardcover book. So it is available right now, but it's only available, I think, at your local comic book shops. It appears to help your brick and mortar stores. Amazon got it later, or gets it later. So Amazon
they get it in May.
Right. It's going to start shipping in May, but you could have it right now. Actually, started 3 weeks ago. Maybe you could buy this book and support your local comic book shop. It's not going to be at the same discounted price as Amazon offers. You're going to be paying retail, which is I think $39.99. But yeah, you could. Oh, geez, $49.99 is full retail, and then $65.99 in Canada. Ouch. But yeah, it's a great book, and but the posters, both posters are fantastic. But yeah, I was just excited as you. And then, all right, and then the first trailer drops. It's Bonnie Tyler holding out for a hero.
I don't know, man. It's a perfect trailer. It captures that essence of the 80s with a very iconic 80s song that is perfectly fitting for Masters of the Universe. I mean, and it's showing so many cool things in that trailer. Like I don't know how many times I watched that trailer. Easily, probably pushing 100 times I've watched that trailer, that teaser. It's awesome.
It's awesome. How do you describe it? This is probably inappropriate, but it's orgasmic. It's just yeah, it's just a wonderful jubilation of. I just watched it over and over and over again, and it is masterful, and that is why it deservedly won a Clio Award. That trailer, and yeah, that was fantastic. And then that was followed up by a second trailer, which actually showed.
So there's the teaser trailer, which was the Bonnie Tyler holding out for a hero trailer, and then there's the story trailer, which showed more story details, plot details of what to expect.
Yep, and yeah, I think that actually premiered a month later, and it sort of gave you the story outline, more like the synopsis that we got during PowerCon, 2019, where they mentioned that it was going to be Tila and her quest, right?
Yeah, and that initial synopsis had, it said something along the lines of that a big battle happens, something bad happens, and fractures Eternia, and so now it's up to Tila and an unlikely alliance to solve the mystery of the power sword, of the missing power sword.
So overall, it was a 10-episode series. 5 episodes dropped July 23rd, 2021. And then the other 5 concluded on November 23rd. Yeah, 2021. And go ahead. Why don't you give us your thoughts?
I stayed up. It aired here at 1 a.m. when it became available, and I stayed up for both of them so I could watch them as soon as they premiered. And when part 1 dropped, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch the first episode and then I'll go to bed and finish it up. But then I just watched the entire thing in one sitting. So I didn't get to bed till about 3:30, 4 o'clock a.m. that day. And then the
That's awesome.
same thing with part 2. I mean, I stayed up. I was watching a documentary about RoboCop, just killing time, waiting for part 2 to become available, and then I watched it all. And it was 3 in the morning, and I think I cheered out loud at certain parts that I was eager to see, and I got to see him happen. So I loved it. I mean, it was awesome.
You know, you're a better fan than me. I'm not a real fan. You know, I think I had work the next day, or so I couldn't do that. And now, granted, I think it was midnight for me, but I couldn't do it. And I knew if I started, I wouldn't be able to finish. You know,
Yeah.
and so I think I had to wait for that evening. And same thing with the 23rd. What was that? The Wednesday before Thanksgiving or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So same thing. I had to go into work that morning, so it wasn't until that evening that I watched it. And then I watched it. It was great because it was almost just like watching a movie, two movies, right?
Yeah.
Part
Yeah.
one and then part two.
Yep.
And with no break in between. And no, I loved it too. And it was exactly what this hardcore child fan of Filmation wanted in a continuation as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I keep saying to anyone that I know, it really was. I found it to be a love letter to the classic series. Yet it elevated the classic series to lofty, lofty heights.
Well,
Like,
it just, it had, I guess it had they had the bravery to follow these ideas and to ask these questions about how things would happen. Like, so I guess what I'm saying, like, the main thing that happens is Adam's secret is revealed in episode 1. That's the revelation, that Adam is He-Man, and he dies doing that, and Teela watches it all happen. And so to me, the interesting follow-up to that is what happens next. How does that affect people? How does that affect someone like Teela, who just watched all this happen, just had this massive revelation, dropped on her about two people, essentially. She has Adam, that she is best friends with and grown up with, but then there's also He-Man, who she's fought side by side with and has affection for. And to have them revealed to be the same person, and she didn't know, and now she's dealing with the grief of it all, and the realization that, oh, there's other people that actually knew this secret. I'm kind of the only one that didn't really know a lot about what's really going on. And so it's asking those questions, and it's answering those questions with, like, no, this is how people would react. This is how people deal with these kind of emotions and these kind of serious issues. And I appreciated that. As an adult, those are interesting questions to ask, and those are interesting questions to answer. And I think that's why I fell in love with Revelation. I was like, it's approaching this in a realistic manner, and it's not treating me like a child. I felt horrible watching how episode 1 ends and watching Teela throw her crown down and leave the kingdom. Like, I could feel, like, I felt heartbroken over it. I was like, this is sad. This isn't what I want to see, but I do want to see it because it's it's good storytelling.
well, yeah, if you think about it, I mean, there was a core group in the Filmation series. You got Man at Arms, you got Orko, you got Adam, you got Teela, Sorceress, and He-Man. Adam's alter ego, and there's only one person who didn't know that secret in that core group. Didn't know any of the secrets, and that was Teela.
Yeah.
Everyone else
it
knew.
kind of reminds me of, to reference DC Comics, you have the trinity of characters, which is Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. For Masters of the Universe, it's He-Man, it's Man at Arms, and it's Teela. They're the trinity. Except one of the trinity doesn't know what's actually going on with how things work in the world of Eternia.
But
And that's a lot.
everyone
Yeah, yeah.
around her, Cringer,
Mhm.
Orko, the sorceress, the main, well, geez, even the queen,
Yeah.
so, uh, and geez, how would I react? I'd be
Yeah.
pretty pissed off, combined with all these emotions of mourning and horror and sadness. I would be pissed off for all
Yeah.
this time. You have kept something this huge away from me. What, I didn't count? I
Mhm.
wasn't trustworthy enough,
Well,
I mean,
and there's that humiliation there. Like, her main
yeah,
role was to be Adam's bodyguard. So how humiliating would it be to learn that Adam didn't really need a bodyguard at all because he's He-Man? So
yeah,
her entire role beyond being captain of the guard is trivial at this point.
yeah,
It's like it's a big joke.
yeah,
That that's heartbreaking.
yeah,
But they had the balls to tell that story.
yeah, I agree. They definitely went for it and succeeded, and that's why I was saying that they elevated it to
Mhm.
lofty heights, right? They
Yeah.
they treated it like a epic literary fantasy work. They treated
Yes.
it like Lord of the Rings, and to some degree even further when it comes just to human emotions and stuff. But it had stakes, it
Mhm.
had emotion, it had passion, and it treated things seriously. And as an adult, it just worked. I can't even imagine if I remove myself from this. It's like I'm a huge fan of this show as a child, and then they tell an adult sequel, and how it just gels wonderfully together for me in my mind. It's amazing. I can't even
It
fathom, you
Yeah,
know?
what it feels like is, it feels like the sh what we watched as kids with Filmation and what we get with Revelation, we've grown up, and it just feels so natural that it's grown up with us. You know what I mean? We
Uh,
had we had Filmation as kids, and now we have Revelation as adults, and it all just blends seamlessly together, in my opinion, and it just feels like it's grown up with me.
what no, what you said, that's a good line there. It's Filmation that grew with us, right?
Yeah.
And it is feeding the right synopsis in our brain now.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was wonderful. I love that it was treated seriously, and geez, it finally gave us Tila's sorceress arc.
Mhm.
That's why I was always, that's another thing, part of the critique here, where people are like, man, Tila's going to be the next He-Man.
She's gonna
They
get the
ru-
sword.
they ruined my childhood, and Tila's going to be He-Man. I'm like, well, if you know Filmation, Tila's
You know
supposed to
what's
be,
going on.
yeah,
And
she's
I
going
and
to
I love
become,
and I love that Kevin Smith kind of said something, in the way that he says things. He's like, if you know as much as you say you know about He-Man, then you know where we're going with this. Like, it's not a secret where we're
right,
taking her.
right.
You shouldn't be surprised with what's happening right now, because it's
And,
been
and,
part of
s-
the story for a long time.
and some don't know, they,
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
they claim they know, and they don't know. Now, there's also other people that, you know, if you remember back then, a lot of kids didn't have VCRs,
sure,
They wouldn't be home for every episode. They would be grounded. And, they might have caught like a third of the episodes and loved them, and just naturally just don't recall those episodes. And you know what? I got nothing but love for them. I get that they never knew that arc.
sure,
Um and hopefully, as they learn things, and that's part of what for Eternia.com is for, but as they learn, hopefully they go revisit this stuff. This is what's great about Revelation, is that you now have all this like source material that you can go and revisit and go, oh wow, this
hmm
is this is when This is when we find out that Tila is the daughter of the sorceress, and you know, oh wow, this is the reason why probably Zodak didn't um, participate in this movie, which is going to be another lore article, by the way. But I might
Love
as
it.
well just okay, maybe I'll just leave it alone for now. But the but I love that they completed Tila's Sorcerer's Arc, and you know what? They made me really love Orko and
Hmm.
Adam. Both of
Hmm.
those
Oh
guys.
man, Adam got so much character development in Revelation that it was amazing. And I remember watching it, and when He-Man finally gets his sword, but when Adam finally gets his sword back in episode 10 and becomes He-Man again, I was like, oh yeah, He-Man's back. But I'd had so much, they built up Adam so good that it kind of didn't make me it. I don't know. I didn't miss He-Man as much as I thought I did because Adam was there being the hero.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
mean,
I never loved Adam before,
I couldn't
but
wait till he turned into He-Man in the old show. It's like,
yes,
yeah, you know,
it's
go
like Clark
run off.
Kent.
Yeah, go pull your sword out. Let's get to the good stuff.
Yeah, but Revelation showed me Adam's heart.
Hmm.
A heart that I just simply fell in love with.
Yeah,
And you know, th- that's what made the show so wonderful. And Orko too, as I mentioned before. Orko, I always found him as annoying, but I not I didn't hate
but he,
Orko.
he but he was the comic relief, and that
Yeah,
that's what we regarded him as. He's like, no, he's nothing more than the joke character, right?
yep. But and it was just a wonderful mix, and just to feel Orko's pain and the grief of losing Adam and losing He-Man, and that's what Kevin Smith was talking about, that the whole show was about He-Man.
Yeah.
You can't have the death of Superman, which is a very famous comic book storyline, with Superman always in that storyline. And here it is all about He-Man, their loss, what's happened now that He-Man and Skeletor are gone. And when you're hearing like Orko talk about He-Man and Adam, and this it's the heartbeat of
Yeah,
the
you
show.
feel you feel his absence, and you see these flashbacks that Tila is having, where she's remembering He-Man and remembering her adventures with He-Man, and then you see her utilizing the lessons that she learned from He-Man in how she deals with other people. You see, I think, what is it, episode 2, where they do the spin move
Yeah.
against Whiplash,
Yep.
and then that comes right up again, and she does it with Andra to help him get out of Snake Mountain, and then she does it again later with Adam in
Yeah.
Preternia. You see these little through lines, these narrative through lines of why this is a show about He-Man, because, like you said, he's the heartbeat throughout the entire thing. Everybody's referencing him, everybody's talking about him, everybody's remembering him and missing him and feeling the weight of his absence on this world.
Yeah. And it makes me sad that some people don't get that. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And but you know what? As I say, nothing but love for them. Seriously. Seriously. And I just hope that as time goes by, as we get a season 2 and a season 3, fingers crossed.
no, no, when we get a season
When
2
we
and a
get,
season
yeah.
3.
But as time goes by, fans will really regard this and come to appreciate, the ones that haven't appreciated it already. As
Sure.
this, as the smoke, the culture clash smoke clears, and they remove the bodies, which is
Hmm.
already starting to happen.
Yeah.
That people can look at it with a new set of eyes. Because, to be honest with you, I've known a couple people where I've recommended that show, and guess what they said to me? They said, "Oh, I heard that show is woke,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's the reason why they stayed away. They see it come up on their YouTube feed, as your
Yeah.
videos recommended for you, and they see that, or they read a little about that. And some of these are ideologically driven YouTube media stars
Yeah. Yeah.
that like stirring the pot and might not
Hmm.
necessarily be very familiar with Filmation, and ones that will say Tila's becoming the next He-Man or Andra's becoming the next
Well,
He-Man.
it's just not, it's not a good faith representation of what Revelation is.
Yeah.
I can understand people being, you know, disappointed because they didn't get what they had expected. I can feel for that. I can understand that. But I guess I don't know. I think that's all I'll say. Just to keep it nice.
Yes. Yes. We like to stay nice. We like to stay
Yeah,
positive here. And even if anyone doesn't like the show, I'm always interested in listening to their opinion. Like what you mentioned, some people said he sounds too much like Joker. Okay, I'm okay with
hmm,
that, but I can understand that criticism because sometimes I
sure.
hear Joker. And if
Yeah,
you're a big Batman animated series fan, and it could be a distraction for you. So, not everyone's going to agree, but I can accept people's point of views, and not everyone's going to love the show. And if you're judging it for story elements or acting or plot points or what have you, that's great.
hmm,
If you have real meat behind your disagreement with the show, then hey, like I said, nothing but love towards you, and sorry you didn't like it, but it's the other ones that that are just driven by other means, right?
yeah,
By
yeah.
a narrative and bandwagon jumping, and also make money out of just this stirring the pot.
Yeah,
They
just
look for
just that mean spirited take.
they look for the next they look for the next show or something to complain about. This went
Yeah,
woke, that went woke,
it's
and
all
I'm
going
like,
woke.
you know what? If you watch the Filmation show, Tila, it was the captain of the guards. I think, what was that episode? The Game Master, maybe, where Tila was actually indicated the second best fighter on Eternia. I think
Yeah,
she was in a arena. I mean, she's a great fighter, and she was already preordained to get all this power as a
yeah,
sorceress.
yeah.
So if you're saying all this is woke, then I guess it was woke in 1983 as well.
Well, I kind of think Filmation was a little bit more woke than Revelation even gets close to being, if I'm being honest.
Hmm. Maybe. I mean, that's something we'll definitely have to explore in another podcast, because we could keep going. How long? It's been an hour and 50
It's been almost,
minutes.
yeah, yeah. It's been a while.
Yep. So I think at this point we should wrap it up. Colt, do you have anything else to add before we wrap this up
I
with a bow?
Yeah, I want it before we wrap it up and before we get into the more particulars of the series as we go on. I wanted to ask you what if you had a favorite moment from Revelation that just made your
Ooh.
heart soar.
Ooh. This is tough because there's so many favorite moments. I'm always yelling to kiss the ring, just like Randor says. I love. There's so many moments where King Grayskull says that Adam's the only champion that kept his lesser form. I love when at the end when Adam raises his sword, or He-Man, and says, "Let the power return," and just the upswell of the music. Oh, I love the whole episode of what was it, the Gutter Rat?
Yeah,
You
with
know,
Evelyn's past.
yeah, and not just anything that you see in the forefront in regards to dialogue, but the transitions, where you'll hear, who knows, Tila say something about who knows what's in a sorceress's heart.
Hmm.
But as you're hearing Tila say that, it becomes voiceover, right?
Yeah, and you see Evelyn walking.
Yes, and there was a lot of
Yeah.
that transitioning from one scene to another that I'm like, this is really masterful filmmaking, series making, um, really well thought out, really just high caliber execution that I was just the technique of it I love. So there's so many aspects. I'm afraid, you know, oh, you're in trouble now. I mean, there's a million things that, I just love. I would really have to think about trying to nail it down to just one. It's so much. The score, Bear just did an amazing
Oh, he
job.
killed it.
Ah, well, do you have one, Colt?
I have, yes.
Thank
So
goodness you just have one.
I have many scenes that I really like, but the one that just brought it home for me and just made me feel so happy with this series is because I finally got to see something that I wanted to see since I was a kid, and that was Adam and Tila finally becoming something of an official couple. There's no kiss. I wanted a kiss. I didn't get it, but that's okay because hopefully it's coming. But we got that moment between them on the balcony where it's quiet. It's a quiet moment, but it's a sweet moment, and it just, I guess that good-hearted feeling and that happy feeling is what I associate with Filmation. Is it always made me feel good? It always made me feel happy, and to see them bring Adam and Tila together, especially after what we just saw them go through with each of their struggles, but that they could find each other again and come back together and be happy together.
Yeah,
It was the
yeah.
moment where I was just like, this is the perfect way to end this series, and I'm happy with Revelation.
I love when she finishes his sentence off and says, "My hero,"
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Ah, it's such a great
And
moment.
it's fun because it kind of, I guess in my head canon, it kind of ties back in with that teaser trailer of Holding Out for a Hero.
Hmm.
It's it's kind of, we started with a hero and it ends with Tila calling Adam her hero.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I really like that, and I kind of think it's beautiful.
it's a wonderful moment, and that's my problem. The series is just full of
Yeah.
wonderful moments, like Randor, right? Hugging his son, a little
Oh,
savage He-Man,
it's amazing. Finally seeing him for who he is.
Yeah, and the tears, and I'm like, oh my god, am I getting choked up? It's a cartoon. I'm getting choked up.
And I mean that I if a cartoon can make me cry, then it's done a good job. And
Amazing.
I think I'm big enough of a person to say that I cried a little bit watching Revelation,
It's wonderful. It really is.
and I'm okay with that.
Damn straight.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. All right. Maybe one of the episodes will have a good cry.
Yeah, it'll just be us crying.
It's just be us crying, talking about scenes and they balling up. All right. Anything else to add? Cool.
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. So just to wrap this up, guys, want to thank you for listening to our premiere episode of the podcast. Hopefully, you like what you hear. It's going to be available on a lot of formats, including YouTube. And please leave your comments. Hopefully, they're all nice, and we'll try to read them. And any recommendations, please go ahead and suggest. And if you enjoyed the show, we're just happy you enjoyed it. Regarding the site, you could find us at foreternia.com. We have news articles there. We have lore articles there. And we have Voices of Eternia, which we were mentioning before, where everyone has a voice. And Easter eggs as well. And you can find us from that page. We have a Twitter account and a Facebook page and a YouTube account. And that's it. So for Eternia.com, we appreciate you spending your time with us, and we hope you enjoyed it. And let the power return. We'll see you next time.